Welcome to the Anti-Architect Podcast. I am your host, Christian Giordano. As president and owner of the design firm Mancini Duffy, I am driven by a quest for learning and radically changing the industry. With this podcast, I'm hoping to improve the industry that I'm so passionate about by taking a critical look at how architects work through a variety of voices and shared experiences.
Jay, thank you so much for being my guest here on the Anti-Architect Podcast.
Glad to be here.
Awesome. So the audience, just so that everybody knows, Jay and I have been friends for many years. And if there is one thing I can say about him, it's that he's sharp, quick, and he knows his business. He can be a hard ass and a ball buster. In the best possible way, of course.
True. Hopefully.
And one thing I've noticed about Jay is he absolutely hates when people are slow and avoid conversations and issues. He'd rather cut straight to the point and get a handle on things. So Jay, let me start here. Why do you think that directness and speed matter so much in this business?
Well, I guess it's time is money, right? I'd like to also say that I also think that I'm fair in those that ball busting manner. I like speed and accuracy. Obviously, those things don't always come together, but I would rather have a conversation to get to the point and say this is actually what it is than it be drawn out over 35 emails and 3 weeks.
Yeah, that's a good point.
For sure.
So why do you think in our business, some people do draw it out like that or take forever to make decisions?
I think there's a lot of people that don't want to make a decision in fear of making the incorrect one. I would rather someone make a decision, and if it's wrong, figure out a way to fix it and say, hey, we did this, we screwed up, and this is how we're going to fix it.
Right.
There's always, time is money. So, when we're doing a development and we have now not the lowest interest rates in the world, we tend to need some speed and accuracy to help drive the project and save investors and ourselves money.
Yeah, I get it. So let me go to my architect question. So if you had to pick one thing, what annoys you about architects?
Speed and accuracy.
Yeah.
I think it's somewhat of working close, with blinders on, knowing what a developer or, owners want up front is helpful. So I think it's more of, hey, let's just outline something. And sometimes that doesn't always happen. Sometimes it's, hey, we want to design this really pretty picture. And at the end of the day, we can't afford the pretty picture, or this project doesn't need that pretty picture. Right. So I think it's trying to understand upfront what ownership or the developer or the project needs, and then executing on that versus executing their vision and then working backwards.
Right. So to be fair to the architect, because I totally agree, and I would say from our point of view, right, we were given a budget a lot. And then we don't really understand what that budget means, and therefore we just go gangbusters, design things, and then, a month later, 2 months later, or even worse, 6 months or a year later, we're told, hey, you blew the budget, right? So what are the kind of things that you think you guys can do as a developer to really guide us on the budget side?
Communicate, right? Hey, this project, the finishes don't need to be the highest end. We can VE that out, or, hey, we want to spend money on this portion of the project and maybe we can find something more cost effective for this. We don't need the fancy facade. We like to focus on the interior, or this project, we need something to catch the eye from the street or the highway or wherever we're targeting our market, and we're going to spend some money there. I think it's more of the communication up front of where we want to spend the money, not just this is the budget, puke it out, and then leaves you guys kind of going, like this.
Yeah, I get it. Yeah, and I guess the hard part is too that, and I say this all the time on the show, right, is that architects don't really understand what things cost, right? We don't understand what the MEP behind the walls costs. We don't understand truly what the structure costs. And when it's all said and done, in our mind, we're like, well, okay, fine, we'll pick some cheaper finishes, but that's not really where the meat is on the bone, right? So how do we get the whole team to really understand? Like, I just really want to drill down on budget. Like, how do we communicate that budget? Is there a better way of saying, like, hey, there's so much is structure, so much is MEP, things like that?
I think we find better engineers. No, I'm just kidding. No, I think it's really the coordination. I think, with the advent of BIM, that kind of helped to pull that in a little bit. But, it's really the coordination of the drawings when it happens, right? So I think that one of the things that architects can do better is really understand, hey, I have a complete set of drawings now. Where are my hits? And like I said, BIM has helped with that, but it still hasn't gone completely. So it's, hey, I have a transfer slab, or hey, I have steel, and you can't put your shaft there, or you can't put your piping there. And then all of a sudden, you go through that whole process, and then it's like, okay, now we need to pad out this wall. We need to do that. And, for me, I think it's the coordination is really the most important thing.
Okay. Yeah, I totally agree. And I think also allowing time for coordination. A lot of times the schedule, we have all these deliverables, right? The schedule gets compressed, and then we sort of coordinated, but we really needed a month to do it, but we did it in a week.
Right.
Kind of thing.
Yeah, and that's a full team issue, right?
Right.
Because I'm trying to close financing, we're getting equity partners, we're doing all this stuff, and it's like you're kind of going forward because it's like, okay, if I don't get this equity or I don't get this debt, is the project even going to happen? And I don't want to tell you, go gangbusters, then I'm paying you a large amount of money, and then all of a sudden now it's a dead cost for me.
Right.
So it's a very, very, tough, line to, follow, and kind of a catch-22. Yeah. So I think obviously getting you guys involved as early as possible is always the best thing.
Yeah, totally agree. I was just thinking of an example, right, because communication is huge. And we're working on a project right now where we had a deadline of it was like a 75% construction documents deadline. And we were told by the team that you must meet this deadline no matter what. And then there were changes that occurred up until like a week before, like major changes, like big scope changes, right? So in our defense, we kind of slapped something together and we made that deadline. It definitely wasn't 75%. Right. It definitely wasn't coordinated. It was not good, right? It was not good. Right. And then I get a call from the owner like, what's going on? You guys submitted a real pile of crap. I'm like, well, look, we had to get it done, right? Like we had to get this done. You made all these changes. It's the best we could get done in essentially a week. We wiped out a month's worth of work. And he said, well, why didn't you call me and tell me this was happening? I would have just told you, well, then take the time that you need. Tell me what it is. And I was like, because honestly, I was afraid to call you and tell you we weren't going to make a deadline.
I would rather have you do that 10 out of 10 times. Let me vent to you like, what the hell's going on? And then say, okay, how much time do you really need? Because, I know that in 6 months or a year and a half, that's going to save me a tremendous amount of money and time.
Exactly. Yeah.
Exactly. So, I mean, me personally, I would much rather hear the bad news up front, and I would rather you pick up the phone, right? So that's one of my biggest pet peeves in this business at all now, not just with architects and whatever, is people will just blast out emails and blast out emails and blast out emails. And as well as I do, you're getting 200-300 emails a day, if not more. Yeah. So sometimes you're not going through those emails until a day later, 2 days later, a week later, and all of a sudden it's, oh crap. And like you said, if someone picked up the phone and said, hey, Mr. Developer, I am struggling getting you what you really want by this time, I'd rather you just tell me, I need another week or 2 weeks, and I'll try and pull that in as best as I can. But this is really the timeline.
It's a good lesson to learn. It really, really is. And I'm glad to hear you guys are open to that. I think most responsible owners do understand that the things that you do now affect you way down in the future, especially in construction.
Makes it so much worse.
Yeah, 100%. So how can architects be more valuable to developers beyond just kind of waiting for you guys to send us, an RFP?
Mm-hmm.
Like, how can we help you?
Well, I mean, I think from our relationship, I pick up the phone and I call you and I send you, hey, this is what I have. And you say within a couple of days, yep, I can do it, or no, I can't. Like it just happened to us on a big box retail in Florida, right? Like, hey, I don't have anybody that's good for this. Instead of you pandering and saying, well, maybe I can go to this guy and figuring out how you can do it, just tell me you can't do it.
Yeah.
Right? Like, doesn't mean I'm going to like you or think your work like you any less or think your work is any worse. I just know that, okay, for this, I need to find someone else to do it.
Yeah.
And that's okay.
Okay. Yeah. Back in the day, I wouldn't have done that. I would have totally BS'd you.
Right.
And told you I could do it. And then we may or may not have pulled it off kind of thing. You know what I mean? And I think that was such a desperation to make sure I was bringing in work all the time and afraid that if I said no to a project, you wouldn't call me back for the next one. And now I've, as you mature throughout this whole thing, you think like, actually, sorry, don't have someone that can do that. I asked around. I was actually surprised we didn't have someone that could do that. But everybody said no
now
experience.
You know where to focus on the next, the next one.
Exactly. So, and then are there other things in terms of when you're looking at sites, how we can be helpful?
Absolutely. I mean, we've done this before together. Massings are incredibly helpful to us, whether it's just for us to be able to say, yeah, you know what, this is a viable project, we can do that, or no, it's not, and let's just cut bait and move on. Being able to pick up the phone and say, hey, here's the site, this is what we're thinking. What do you guys think? And you can come back and say, hey, I don't think that design's going to work, or you're targeting X amount of square feet. We don't think you can get that, but you can get Y.
Right.
And then it allows us to run, our models and our numbers and say, okay, well, yep, okay, we can live with it at this, or you know what, maybe we should just, pass on this one.
Yeah.
So just giving us the information we need to make those decisions up front is, wildly helpful.
Yeah. Now here's something that comes up every now and then, and it's we've been told that there's this project that needs a design team and a development team. How often do you see the architect bringing you an opportunity where it's, hey, we need to team on this kind of thing?
That has not happened to us. I shouldn't say that. It's happened before, but it's not the norm anymore for us.
Yeah.
I would love that. I have no problem with that. I would love for anybody to bring a project and say, we think this is viable. We've talked to the current owner. They want out. We did some work for them here. They're looking to sell this piece, and for me, it's like great. It's just a business decision at that point. I am happy to work with whoever as long as we feel that they can get the work done.
Okay. I like that. Yeah, that's cool. Now, when you're in the, you're interviewing architects, you're selecting them, what's most important to you when selecting an architecture?
No. For me, I think price is always a function of your experience, the project, and your level of service, right? You could do anything for any price if I tell you have to do it for this.
Right.
For me, it's experience for sure, especially on, if you're in the city and you have local law 11, or you're, working with existing buildings, or you're, trying to work on a shared lot line building, for sure. In the suburbs, it's a little different. For me, it's just kind of like, I personally like experience. I want someone that has done it before, knows what they're doing, understands like, hey, structural systems, like perfect example, self-storage, we do a lot of that. Mm-hmm. That is, once you've done it 3 or 4 times as an architect, can kind of be cookie cutter.
Yeah. You're an expert.
Yeah, exactly. But the one thing that really drives it is the structural system, right? And you can design a building structurally 10 different ways, especially a self-storage. But if like, oh, hey, this is it's not, this is a campus style. We have 2.5 acres, and I can do it out of light gauge. We don't need steel or whatever. I think it definitely helps that you've done it before, and you're like, okay, for this one we can definitely go in this direction, and that will delineate the cost from this to this and kind of move it forward. So I think for me, it's always experience and then kind of pricing and then so on and so forth, your team and, how they go from there.
Right. How important is the team dynamics? Like when they come in for an interview, can you tell right off the bat, like, oh, these are people I'd like to work with, or these are people I know we're going to have issues with? Like, how does that all work?
Yeah, I mean, I think that you can tell right away, right? Like, and for me, I always like to try and work with people that I get along with. Like, I always say it's like the grab a beer test. Like, hey, after we hash it out or we have an issue and we're going back and forth about a price or a design or whatever it is, after that's all said and done and we come to an agreement, we still want to go and get a beer afterwards. I don't want to work with people where I always feel like it's going to be contentious and there's always going to be an issue, whether it's, whatever. We just argue about everything. And I just don't want to do that. Like, I don't have time for that. I want to just be able to say, okay, we're good. Let's keep going.
That's great. I like that, the grab a beer test. That I should kind of use that more.
Yeah.
We interview other architects, and I know, like, from a cultural fit immediately within a half a second, like, is this person going to fit into our firm or not? And I think the grab a beer test is a perfect.
Yeah, it's like I want to be able to after all said and done, like, I want to work with you again. I don't want to just be like, I don't want to deal with that person ever again. That was terrible.
Yeah. So you mentioned the self-storage, and you guys do a lot of like industrial and logistics stuff as well as residential. We'll get into kind of what more Hampshire does. But from the architect's point of view, are there any innovations that you're seeing in like that industrial space or in that self-storage space, or is it, and which is perfectly fine, is it sort of the trusted methods, the trusted things are really what at the end of the day matter?
I think it goes back to that experience, right? The trusted things do work. Obviously, we're not sitting on, or going to these tech shows and understanding the new technology that comes out. Like, I would rely on you for you to be like, hey, I think on this project there's this new software or there's this new program, or, we think we can recycle this old project that we've done it. And you guys have your VR that kind of walks you through the spaces, and that's amazing. And, I think I would lean more on the architect to tell me, hey, for this project, I think this would kill it.
Right.
So, okay, let's do it. I am very much, for believing and showing and trusting. That's the other thing. I want to trust the people I work with.
So when I think of some of the self-storage, the industrial parks that are happening, I see a lot of pushback right now by communities, just because they've, in their mind, right, it's been overdeveloped, right? You don't want that in your backyard, all that sort of stuff. How are you guys dealing with that? And then how can the architect help kind of mitigate some of that?
I think that NIMBY is, for sure a real thing, right?
Right.
I've found that municipalities, they will NIMBY you to a point where they can until they want something. And hey, we really need a new park. We really need a new firehouse, or we need this. And then that kind of like that line gets kind of blurred. I think that architects can easily just say, hey, for this site, you guys are competing with X, Y, and Z that we've seen. We're in this space. We've worked in this municipality. We worked in this general area. We know that you may have some trouble with, the residents of the town. We think that you will need to do X, Y, and Z for your facade, make it a little softer, make it fit a little bit more. We did a self-storage in Perth Amboy, and the exterior is all thin brick, and it's literally in an industrial park, and you're going over, the Outer Bridge crossing, and the building looks like it could be in Georgetown.
Oh, wow.
And it's like, okay, well, was that completely necessary for this area? But the town wanted it to look that way.
Right.
So, it's a give and take with anything. And, it's hard. I know as a resident of, suburban New Jersey, you don't want to live in a place where you feel like there's commerce happening in your backyard. I completely get it.
Yeah.
And, and the people of the town should understand that, developers, we live in towns too. Like we get it. But also it's a function of what your town wants, what we think is the proper use of the land, and going forward. And you guys are intricate in telling us, hey, we can make it look like this, so maybe it'll be a little more well received on the back end.
Yeah. We're actually doing a self-storage building in Morristown that looks like an art gallery. I mean, it's actually pretty awesome. I don't know if it'll actually ever happen. It might be too expensive too, but it could be cool.
Yeah, I mean that's all part of it. I know Morristown well.
So let's shift gears here. And for the listeners, Hampshire is a privately held, fully integrated real estate firm and investment fund manager based out of Morristown, New Jersey, with over 50 employees. The company manages a full spectrum of investment, acquisitions, rehabilitations, developments, property management across all sorts of asset classes. So can you give us an overview of Hampshire's development strategy and how you guys set yourself apart from others?
We are a 100-year-old firm. Started in Teterboro, Hackensack area, Bergen County. Started as fund managers and then, naturally developed into a, development company. What sets us apart is our relationships. We've been around for years. The name Hampshire means something in the industry, especially in the North Jersey market. We did that, I think, our first self-storage in the late 80s, early 90s, before it kind of became this sexy asset class, which when you look at a self-storage, you're like, how is that sexy? But you guys see it everywhere. It's everywhere.
It's everywhere.
So, I think what sets us apart is our relationships. We partner with really good firms and really, successful people. And we, try to deliver what we know we can and keep that name meaning something.
Yeah. So on that self-storage front, right, you're absolutely correct. It's everywhere. And it's pretty extraordinary. How is that market? And it continues to grow? Or is at some point, does everybody have enough place to put their extra stuff?
I don't know. And if you keep building multifamily buildings, people are still going to need to put their stuff, especially as the units get smaller and tighter, or you have constraints on the size of the development. People will always need a place to store their stuff. For me, the Southeast is the perfect example. Florida, nobody has a basement.
Yeah.
So everybody, even if you have a 1,500 square foot house, where do you keep your stuff that doesn't fit in your house? They have a lot of single family developments going up, and you guys know, being in the Tampa market, nobody has a basement. No, everybody needs some place to store their stuff. So the short answer is there's definitely times where it plateaus, but at the same time, as long as there's new product for people living and working, there's always going to be a need for people to put their stuff somewhere.
Yeah, and we've done them in New York City too, these high-rise self-storages, which are also very expensive to build and sometimes don't pencil out. But I'm surprised there's not more and more of that happening, because in New York City, the same thing. There's nowhere to put your stuff.
Right. And and they're getting old warehouse buildings that were that high, and all, and as you build a new apartment complex or a new condo complex, people that live in New York City want their residents to be nice. They don't want to have their bike and their beach chairs and stuff like that stored where, there's a limited amount of storage.
Christmas decorations.
Exactly. So it's like, it's always there because of the lack of space or people living, and as they grow their families and whatnot. And then, it's funny because it works on both ends of the spectrum. As you grow your family, you have more stuff, but you need more room for a child or, multiple children. And as you get older, people have a hard time parting with their stuff. So it's like, oh, I don't need my 3-bedroom condo anymore. I'm going to downsize to a 1-bedroom, but I don't want to get rid of all this furniture. My kids may need it in 25 years. So, it's like, let's just stick that in storage.
I throw everything out.
That's good for you.
I throw stuff out, and then
Nina
10
feel
minutes
about
later, someone's asking me where it is. And I'm like, damn it, I think I just threw that out. And I pretend like, oh, it's there. Don't worry about it. So beyond obviously self-storage industrial, you guys also do beautiful multifamily residential. So talk a little bit about kind of how those developments come about and some of the projects that you've done.
A lot of the multifamily that we've done, has primarily been in the Bergen County, North Jersey markets. And to be honest, a lot of them have come to us, with our existing relationships and, hey, we don't want these dilapidated buildings anymore. We think it'd be ripe for, people living here. We have a hospital, or we have an area that's traditionally just occupied by single-family homes, large single-family homes. You have, unfortunately, people that go through divorce. You have people whose lives change, and all of a sudden their 5,000 square foot house doesn't work for them anymore. But they love the town that they live in. They love the school system that they're in. They don't want to leave. They want to still be a part of the community, but financially it doesn't make sense, or you just have a life change and you want to stay where you live because you love it.
Right.
So it's okay. Let's give someone another option. And that, we just finished something like that up in Allendale, and people love it. Yeah.
And what kind of amenities are you seeing in some of these projects?
They change so often, which is so cool. But I feel like, first of all, podcast studios are becoming the new rage of the multifamily building, because people can now do and earn a living working from home, but doing online content. Obviously people want a place to work if they work from home. They want a nice area to sit outside. They want all the amenities that they would have in a single family home to be in their building.
Right.
Even more of them actually. Like, how many people have a sports simulator in there?
Golf simulator.
Golf simulators,
stuff,
nice bars, pool tables. A lot of people wouldn't be able to have that in their home if they purchased a home.
Right.
So I think that we're constantly trying to stay on the cusp of what's next and what people want. But we also find that they want a comfy chair to come down to the, club room and sit in and turn on the game, or, have a place where they can go watch Love Island with the community, and, everybody kind of gets into it. So, we're finding, they want to be able to host a gathering. Obviously it's not going to happen in their apartment, so they have the ability to do that in a club room or in a, shared space that, is really nice.
Right. And then do you look to the architect for some of these ideas?
100%. You guys know, you're working not just with us, you're working with 10, 20, 50 other developers, some in California, Florida, Texas. What are you seeing there? Like, can we bring that to the Northeast? Yeah. Down, in Florida, obviously, we want pickleball courts and we want outdoor space. In the Northeast, it's, you're only getting to use that 4 months, 5 months out of the year.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, so let's try and marry the best of that with the available space we have, because also in those, more rural, more open areas, you have more space.
Yeah.
You can design a better thing. So it's like, hey, how do we marry all that into this confined area? And
we also take stuff from like the corporate world, right? Yeah. We pull from that. We pull from the aviation, like lounges and things that we do. Some of the hospitality things that we do, and try to kind of bring that to the developer. Sometimes it makes sense. Sometimes it's kind of silly and one-off things. But you are seeing more and more of these kind of hospitality things inside residential.
Yeah. And we would lean on you and say, hey, we did this in this building and people lost their minds. They love it.
Right.
Great. Let's do that. Anything to help, get the building leased and keep people happy as they're living there.
Yeah, that's great. What do you see? There's a lot of, things about lower income housing or market rate housing, things like that. Are you guys into that? Do you have to incorporate that? And how does all that work?
Yep. You have to incorporate it, right? It depends on the municipalities, it depends on the area. Some people want, some towns want you to just pay them a fee, right? Hey, you don't have to put it in your building because we're going to build this really beautiful low income housing. So just pay us, give us some money to help facilitate that. Also, we have it in our buildings, and, I think that the best thing to do with that is treat it as a normal unit. I think when low income came out, it was kind of like, all right, well, we're not going to spend as much money on those because I have to do it.
Right.
But everybody deserves the chance to live the same life as everybody else.
Right.
And just because this person makes X amount of dollars and I make Y amount of dollars, you don't know why I do that. I may do it because I love it. I just can't make as much money doing it. So for me, I think our biggest thing is we try not to delineate between those things. And if we have to put them in our buildings, we underwrite it, we put it in our buildings.
Yeah, you just integrate it into the
100%.
Yeah, we've been doing that more and more. We used to make sort of a separate floor, a separate wing, which was ridiculous, or it had like really bad views.
Right.
We used to do that honestly in hospitality too. Before the ADA laws changed, right? You could actually take all the hotel rooms, put them on the ground floor, like facing the generator in the back, and then that changed to where now you've got to disperse that throughout. There's no reason why someone with an ADA issue needs to have a crappy view, right, in a hotel and pay just as much. So it doesn't make any sense. Yeah. How are you guys dealing with, and I'm sure I know the answer here, with rising construction costs, market uncertainty? Is that stopping you? Are you hesitant to make deals? How do you see sort of a light at the end of the tunnel? There's a lot going on with that.
Yeah, I mean, I think uncertainty is, it holds the money up, right? That's the biggest thing. I think that there's ways to be creative, and if you believe in a project, you have to be creative with it. Hey, we're seeing, we saw it for a little while with tariffs, which is still kind of hanging out there on the periphery. But if you believe in a project, there's ways to kind of make it work, and whether it's getting creative with financing or bringing on extra equity partners or just diving more into the market and saying, hey, this is going to be a temporary thing. We think that in 6 months interest rates are going to come down, or we think that this area of the country is really set to boom. People are relocating; they want to live in this area. So hey, it may be a short-term pain point, but ultimately we'll get to where we need to be. Yeah, and construction is such a long lead time, especially on residential. Yeah. You need to time that properly somehow. Hope that it works out.
Yeah,
well, it's for sure. And rising costs, as long as you're doing your diligence, you can usually mitigate it for the most part, or be ahead of it and say, okay, we underwrote X. It looks like it's going to be Y. What do we do? Or is this viable?
Right.
And 9 times out of 10, there's a lot of caution that goes in from whether it's a GC or the developer, backfilling some contingencies or whatnot. And what we've found is that over the last couple of years is that we've done that up front. And, while some of the costs have gone up and the projects have gone up, we've also noticed that at the end you do get a little bit of savings on the back end just because of the planning and the contingency that's been input just for that uncertainty.
Right. Yeah, that's smart. Yeah.
And the banks understand too. Everybody wants a project to go forward. Obviously it's always fiscally, determinant, but hopefully you can find a partner that will believe in that too.
And they make money at the end of the day too,
right,
which
exactly.
is so what is your day-to-day role at Hampshire? Like what do you do on a typical day?
What day is it? No, so typically up front, I'm working in the entitlement and the feasibility stage. We're underwriting multiple projects that may never happen, and a lot of them don't, right? So I'm doing that, supporting the underwriting, the cost, management, costing, bidding, and then I'm working through a project that's already under construction and dealing with a general contractor, architects, consultants, figuring out, hey, we have a fire drill here, or, our planning for this is going on. So there's constantly just different moving pieces. And then, obviously trying to hand over projects to our property management staff, to tenants, and working to get our partners answers that they need for their reporting, and consistently just trying to also continue to move the ball forward on everything, whether it's stuff that's in pre-dev, development, construction, or closeout.
Okay.
We try to just move the ball forward any way we can on a daily basis, and understanding that time of year is definitely a thing. And, hey, it's the last week of the summer right now, right? So hey, if we can get a small step forward this week, that's a win.
Right.
Just being realistic about, timing and costs and, giving and setting expectations in all aspects.
Yeah. And do you guys hold on to all your assets or do you sell?
No, we're kind of, it's kind of a case by case basis.
Okay.
We have some projects in opportunity zones where you have to hold it for a certain amount of time. Sometimes we're a merchant developer. Sometimes we're working with a family office or a large pension fund or whatnot who, they're going to hold it because this is their asset. And then they'll decide when, it's the right time to sell for their, for the money that's come in. So, we're kind of, we'll hold for sure. And there's a portion of Hampshire that is, run by the family as a family office, and they hold for, for as long as they want. Yeah, forever. As long as it's cash flow. And, we get calls all the time. Hey, you built this building. You want to sell it? And it's like, well, this is an irreplaceable asset for us. Right. You're not going to get approved to do this in this municipality again. So we'd really like to hold on to this. Or, hey, we noticed this. We think we can do it. We want to get taken out within a couple of years, after stability. Okay. It's all about how we underwrite it and how we see the market. And then, hopefully the market trends lead to what we forecast. So let's go back to your origin story. Where did you grow up? Where did you go to school? I'm a North Jersey guy. I grew up in North Jersey, in Bergen County. Went to Old Pan High School. I was a baseball player, so that kind of drove me to a small Division III school in Pennsylvania. All that time I was working for my family owns a tile marble installation business. So in the summers I was carrying boxes of tile and driving a truck and lifting, carrying stuff upstairs. And I tell people, especially people that we work with on the GC end, hey, I've done this. I was here at 5 o'clock, shoveling yards of sand out for a mud job the next day. Or, I was carrying, 2 pallets of tile up 3 flights of stairs. So, I've done every portion of the business. When I graduated from college, I was a teacher for a couple of years, actually, because I wasn't necessarily sure that I wanted to stay in the construction world. And then ultimately I was like, I need to get back into something that is, constantly moving, constantly changing, and being a part of, a bigger picture. So from there, I started working in the family business, learned how to do takeoffs and read blueprints. I'd already been on construction sites. I'd already, known how they operate.
This is all starting to make sense.
Yeah.
See, everyone should interview their friends.
So, I started in the family business. I also knew that I didn't want to work in that forever. And then we had the downturns and whatnot, and things got tight, and, you had projects getting bankrupted and, trying to collect money. And I was like, all right, let me move on, make everybody's life easier. I went to work for a steel company as a project manager. From there, I went to RXR and worked for a landlord at Short Hills.
Right.
And then Mill Creek, on the GC side, then into the city and did the city stuff with, Madison and JBS, and was working, for clients for JBS in Brooklyn, and, kind of, I've moved on. I shouldn't say moved on. I've changed jobs for a certain, for probably a good 7-year period. I changed jobs probably 4 times, and people would be like, why did you continue to just move around and jump around? And for me, it was, just simply about learning, right?
Yeah.
There's so many different sides of the real estate world, and you interact with architecture in so many different ways, whether it's just, hey, this is what we're delivering. I mean, I'll tell you a perfect story. When I was started at the family business, we were doing a Whole Foods downtown, down by Battery Park.
Okay. I know that one.
Yeah. And I did the takeoff. It was my first takeoff that I did ever. And the drawings had a pattern, and it was different, same color tile, but it was 4 different sizes. And I completely botched it. I got the numbers right, but we ordered everything in a 4x4. And there was a 4x4, there was a 4x12, there was a 6x12, and it was just the sizing of the tile was there to delineate a pattern and make it, look nice behind,
Right.
The fish bar, wherever it was.
Right.
And I ordered everything in 4x4, and it was all this like fire clay, high end, expensive tile that you couldn't return. And when we finally realized that I had screwed up, I thought my dad was going to blow his top. And he was like, look, it happens, and he went to the GC, they went to the architect, and the architect's like, yeah, you made a mistake. All right, well, we need you to put glass tile on the ceiling of the, hot food bar. And so we did that at our cost because I screwed up. But ultimately, it was one of the best learning experiences for me. Yeah. It's like, all right, you learn from your mistakes, you figure it out, and you go forward. And, I think that has stuck with me for a while. I ultimately got to a job at Spandrel where one of the guys I worked with used it's called checking the bagel. And it literally is one that they just intersect probably 10 years apart. He tells a story about how he had to get bagel orders for all the guys in his, on his hedge fund team. And he ordered the right bagels, brought them into the morning meeting, and one of those senior guys was like, this is not what I ordered. And he's like, no, I told them. And he's like, well, did you check the bagel? And I was like, and so now I tell my guys, I'm like, hey, just because someone tells you something's right or you feel like you did it right, just make sure you check the bagel because it always, it could always end up being wrong. And, that stuck with me for a long time. So I was in the city for a while and, life happens. I needed to get back to Jersey. I had a young daughter and I was traveling. In Spandrel, we developed only in the Southeast and we're working out in New York.
Okay.
So I was on a plane probably 4 times a month, going down to Charleston or Savannah or in the Southeast. And I was like, I'm just traveling too much to have a 1.5-year-old at the time. Right. So Hampshire had an opening. I ended up there, started as a senior PM, and has just kind of worked my way up from there.
Nice. That's great. Do your parents still have the marble business?
Oh, yeah. They're still doing tile marble. Nice. Yeah, they do a lot of work for the big GCs in North Jersey.
That's great. So switching a little bit to technology and sort of the future of the profession, how do you see technology, whether it's AI, prop tech, construction innovation, changing the way developers operate in the next 10 years or so?
I think it's going to help alleviate a lot of the pinch points. I myself am not sure that I'm ready to lean on it, wholeheartedly. I think that human interaction is the best possible thing. But I mean, you can see it with the modeling, with what you guys work on with your VR, in the cost accounting. We work with a company called Northspire now who makes, building your construction project snapshots and your cost accounting so much easier just by, how they use their reporting and everything. And, I think that as we go forward, more of those innovations are going to come up. We are not where we're searching for the next technological advance, but we're also not silly enough to know that there's not going to be ones that we're going to, try and, use because they help and they save man hours. Yeah. And what we call blue dollars, because you're not actually paying money for it. But when someone is, spending 3 hours reviewing a set of drawings for, conflicts or hits or, hey, this isn't right, and I think that going forward, AI will be able to kind of alleviate a lot of that process.
I agree. I totally agree. What do you think, lies ahead for the future of our industry in general? Like, where do you see architects, engineers, developers? Like, if you 20, 30 years from now, what does that look like? Any different?
It's a great question. I think there'll be a lot of the same, but there's always going to be, it just kind of depends on the next social aspects. Like COVID, who thought that people would be working from home 5 days a week? Who thought that you wouldn't necessarily be going to an office or traveling to have a meeting in person? I mean, the advent of Zoom and Teams and whatever, it makes everybody's lives easier. I do feel like you lose a lot of the in-person stuff. So, it's a really good balance, and wanting people to be in the office. There's no substitute for being able to sit down and talk to someone and look at a set of drawings, whether it's on a screen or, in front of you, and saying, okay, yes, no, or going to see a property, right? Like, you can do 25 surveys, but if you don't understand that, oh yeah, it shows there's wetlands back here, but where's that delineation? Where you take 3 steps and your feet sink into the mud. Like, okay, we may be outside of this area,
right.
Or how much usable space. I think it ultimately comes down to how much space do we have, right? Like, eventually you have a finite amount of space, so either you're recycling that space or you're moving forward and integrating yourself into the landscape.
Yeah, I love it. So as we wrap up, is there anything we haven't covered that you'd like to tell the listeners?
That's a great question. I think the industry is constantly changing, which makes it so cool. There's always another step that you can take. There's always another problem or fire drill or great innovation that comes forward. And I think that's the most fun part of our business is like, seeing someone that gets to have their first apartment or, nice. And is so proud of that, or, hey, I need a place to put my stuff. Here's a self-storage that nobody would have ever thought would have been there. I just think it's just a cool industry to be in. And, I think problems wise, there's always going to be problems, right? Everything's always going to have an issue. It's just, how you solve it and how you kind of move the ball forward.
Love it. That's great. So on a personal note, I do want to say something that I really admire about you is that Jay always picks up a call from his daughter, no matter where we are, no matter the time of night, and has a full-on conversation. It's never like rushing her off the phone. He says, if we're with a group of guys, hey, everybody say hello. I really do admire that. And I actually changed because of you. I changed, like when my kids would call, I'd pick up and go, is everything all right? And they'd say, yeah, it's fine. I'd be like, all right, then I'll call you later. Now I'm like, no. I'm going to have a full-on conversation with you because that shit stops after a while.
That's the whole thing, right? Like, hey, you only get that so many times. And, my she's so inquisitive too. So she'll be like, who are you with? What are you doing? Where are you? And it's like, well, I'm here. I'm not going to hide it from you. But I always want her to know that she comes first. Business is business. And there will be times when that will, always take precedent, but I'd like her to know that even when those times take precedent, I always have 5 minutes to talk to her.
That's great. I love that. Jay, thank you so much for being my guest here on the Anti-Architect podcast and for letting us into the whole developer side of the world.
I'm happy to be here.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you.
Sweet.
I appreciate it.
Thanks, man.
So to read more about Jay, you can obviously search for Jay on LinkedIn. It's easy to find, Jay Stasi, and then you can also look for Hampshire.com and see all their work.
Awesome.
Thank
Sweet.
you.
Thanks for having me.
Of course.
Loved it.